Back in the 80s, the perfect interior was a black cave, interrupted only by tiny red details that supported functionality. Chrome was the most uncool thing imaginable. My 87 Carrera is a perfect representative of the genus, but lately I noticed some shortcomings and imperfections. You know, this black thing, it only works on me if everything really is in mint condition. There's a narrow ridge between coolness and embarrassment. Let's see one by one the damages of the driver's seat. We have that broken cover for the actuators. Must be ripped out at some place close to the screw. We have that torn seam with a thread that was ripped off. This gap would have soon continued to get bigger. We have an almost torn seam. And most worryingly, one of the previous owners must have used some massively aggressive cleanser, leaving the leather in a really ugly state. Finally, we have that battered area around the switch of the seat adjustment, which, taking a closer look, turned out to be a cigarette burn. You know, everyone smoked back in the 80s, and the Carrera is a real kid of the 80s. So interesting what you find under a classic car seat. The car must have been owned by some guy working for Pirelli. Mr. Pirelli had a well-educated co-driver, no complaints, except his exaggerated cleaning. And despite of all that, I found a disturbing amount of biological material. The bottom side of the seat was covered in it. These seat rails back in the car, they will remain visible and therefore they get some touch-up paint job. Now back to the driver's seat, where I had to remove the seat cover in order to renew some of the broken seams up there. The seat cover is attached to the frame using like a dozen of spikes around the seat frame. You just bend them back and off it goes. It's not a big deal. At the back of the seat they have used these saddler clamps, and I haven't bothered keeping them and reusing them because in most of the cases they were a bit rusty and you can get them for little money on Amazon. Now, I'm everything but an expert in these saddler works, nor do I have much experience in sewing. If you find that clumsy, what I'm doing here, I totally agree. The hole was closed in the end, and that's all I wanted to achieve. Okay, so let's get that cigarette hole filled. I got me a leather repair kit that includes glue, some reinforcement material, and something the manufacturer calls liquid leather. Now let's see how that goes. It's not specifically requested by the manufacturer to use heat on that glue, but it was very cold that day in my workshop, so I remembered that all sorts of glue require 10 degrees Celsius or so, and I gave it a bit of a spring feeling. So here's that liquid leather, which basically is a putty that remains highly flexible after drying. The cool thing is, you get it in all kinds of colors for all kinds of brands. Not an issue if you have black leather, but I think you get the point. The liquid leather works really great, you just need to be aware that you lose the grain of the leather. It's hard therefore to make bigger repairs really invisible, but if one doesn't know where the repair took place, he will likely overlook it. I took 2 attempts to do the filling with some intermediate sanding, and I used that touch-up paint product of the same manufacturer. Okay, if you know what to look for, you can still find the repair section, but hey, it's much better than it was. That other crack was much less advanced than the first one, and I repaired it exactly the same way. This Carrera was equipped with one of two options for electric seats. I don't know exactly how Porsche called this back then, maybe partly electric seats or so. In any case, you can adjust seat height and inclination at the driver's seat, and the co-driver's seat is not electrified at all. It's an elegant design and it works flawlessly, but again it all was very filthy. The faint-hearted may skip the next 10 seconds. I kid you not, all this dirt came out of one seat. It's not a big deal to get the seat cover back on, only the area around the hinge is somewhat challenging. Recaro used staples in abundance here, and you have to walk the line between making an enduring connection and not placing them carelessly, which could end up in a pain in the I mentioned these spikes earlier, and they are a simple and reliable solution to fix the seat cover to the frame. The saddler's universal weapon, however, seem to be these clamps. I'm sure I don't use them properly when it comes to craftsmanship and tools, but eventually it all came together nicely. And really, don't be scared to tackle that sort of work. It's easy. Here goes that Leather Fresh product again, which is a dye specifically made for car leather. I can tell you it's a fabulous feeling to slowly carve out and bring back the leather's beauty. The rear seats, they also became victims of Mr. Pirelli's cleaning mania, but apart from that I felt uncomfortably about the way the hinges and brackets looked. The paint is just not right. If you feel that this is the beginning of a mental disease which will end in a stay at a psychiatric clinic, I don't know how to reasonably argue. The point is, the guy next door to me in our mutual workshop, his baby is this magnificent Saab Turbo. He recently said something very wise. If they don't put a smile on your face, they're pointless. I just couldn't agree more. Okay then, let's get these hinges painted. This Anestivata airbrush, it's a tremendous tool. It barely has any overspray, which means you can almost use it like a pen in your hand. With the right settings, it makes it possible to spray close to a hard edge, and that means you can skip all the masking. Mental disease is progressing. As you can see, I also wasn't pleased with the paint of the car-sided part of the hinge. Remember, this is a special airbrush, so I promise you no carpet was harmed in the production of this video. I promise you knew that now it is time for the seat supports, and this raises the question about what is a classic car and how far would you go in making it beautiful, and at the same time to some extent of course take its patina. The way I see it, I do differentiate between well-deserved patina, which gives dignity to the object, and the bad work of some guy in the past. I like patina, but I hate a bad job, and the guy who did the carpet before I bought this car, he put spray glue all over the support, even at places where there isn't any carpet. If you buy this one, here's one more statement about patina. A heavily used leather steering wheel. Good patina, I like it. The steering wheel is meant to be touched, it's in its nature. Some leatherette which is scratched by people not taking care when climbing on the back seat. Bad patina, I repair it. That's it, let's bring it together again.